Hey, you really don't want to miss this episode because I'm with Donovan Brown to learn everything about Web3 and DevOps. Hi, Donovan.
How are you doing, Frank?
Pretty good, you?
I'm hanging in there. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. So I know we are here today to talk about Web3 and DevOps, but before we go into the root of Web3, maybe we should talk a little bit about what it is. Like, what's the elevator pitch about that?
Sure. So if you think about Web 1, that's back when we were all having those AOL disk and CompuServe disks sent to our houses, and then we would dial up with the modem. And it was a very distributed world, but it was all read only. Like we would basically go read this information. And then the advent of Web 2 is sort of like we had our own voice now because we had social media and ways that we could create our own blog posts. And now it was like a read write where we could read information, but we could actually create our own content. But a lot of that content we created was centralized on some platform or some website that we all went to, and that person kind of owned the data. And then Web3 is sort of like the best of both worlds. We're going to be able to read, write, and even own the information that we create. And a lot of that information, when you think about Web3, is created on what we call a distributed ledger technology, which is more commonly known as just a blockchain. Right. So if you think of cryptocurrencies, those are all built on a blockchain. This is a ledger that doesn't change. It's permanent, and it's transparent. So security is not as big a concern because I can see everything. I can validate that everything was done correctly. And as the person who's creating the content, I have a little bit more ownership of that content than I would have in the Web 2 or Web 1 world. And one of the things that makes me really excited is when you start getting to chains like Ethereum, where you can actually create smart contracts, which is just code that lives on the blockchain and you can execute. So as a developer, I got excited thinking, okay, cool. If I can write software for this, like how do I do DevOps best practices for this environment as well?
Yeah, because you're a DevOps guy. So then, so what gets you excited about that part then? Like, could you
What was
provide
really
us
cool
more
about it
details?
was one, I felt it was like a really fresh area for discovery because I didn't find a lot of literature on it at all, right? So when I went and I started searching for it, you'd find a lot of tutorials, a lot of examples, but not a lot on just DevOps best practices like infrastructure as code and staging environments and development environments and how you would promote from one environment to the next. What I found was a lot of, here's a sample and this is how you push it to mainnet. And mainnet is basically production, right? It was like, ooh, that just makes me scared as a DevOps guy. I'm like, where's my dev QA and before I get to prod so I can verify and test things? So when I started poking around, what I realized was everything that I needed to solve this problem was actually available at Microsoft already. We have Azure DevOps and we have GitHub Actions, which are going to allow you to do your CI/CD. We have GitHub, which will allow you to store all your source code. We already had Visual Studio Code, which is probably the most popular editor that there's ever been. And not only are you able to use it for your spas, but you're able to use it for your smart contracts, that code that actually lives on your blockchain. And we have things like Azure Container Instances, which allow you to run a temporary blockchain. Because when I want to test my app, I don't want to have to test it on, they actually have test nets, but those test nets are also public and they're a little bit slower. Having your own private blockchain is really fast and quick, and I can return it over and over again, and I don't need real Ether or real tokens to actually use it. So it made testing really, really easy. And being able to then leverage all the technology that Microsoft has, I was able to build a full CI/CD pipeline. And what I did is I wrote a blog series about this. So as I started going through this experiment, I thought other people might want to know how to do this. So I created this Medium blog post, and you can see it on my screen right now. This is a 10-part series of exactly what I went through, how I created the initial project, how I created my infrastructure as code files, because even though we're living on a blockchain, there's portions of your code that actually live in the Web 2 world still. So for example, a dApp or a distributed application is actually two parts. There's the front end, which is a SPA or single page application. And then there's the smart contract that actually lives on the blockchain. And then you use JavaScript to communicate between the two of them. And what's really interesting is that Azure Static Web Apps is like purposely built to host a SPA. So I knew where my SPA was going to live. I just had to figure out how do I then deploy these two as a unit so that when my SPA gets updated or my smart contract gets updated, they get updated in unison. So what I did is I wrote this blog series, and this blog series takes you step by step. And what's really cool is that it has these little chapters, and each chapter is a repository or a branch of a repository inside of GitHub. So here is the actual Uber repository. And if you go open to the branches, there's a branch for every part of the 10-part series. And then you can jump into each individual part. You can see how I built the infrastructure as code. So I could go and deploy the Azure Container Instance in Azure, or I could go deploy the Azure Container Apps, the Azure Static Web Apps or the Azure Container Instances in Azure. I actually have all of the code that's necessary for that. How I was able to spin up a temporary blockchain, set it with a certain amount of ether in there, and actually deploy my code to it. It explains everything to you, which is really nice. So what was really cool about it is when I was done, I built an entire CI/CD pipeline using Azure DevOps that automates the deployment of my smart contract and my dApp from dev, QA, and prod, giving me that assurance that I always want as a DevOps person, knowing that my infrastructure will always be provisioned correctly, that I could run unit test against my code before it actually gets pushed from one environment to the next, and be able to use a test environment and a test blockchain before I got into mainnet. So generally, it was just a really cool experience of one, getting to learn Web3 development, and then being able to apply what I love most, which is DevOps best practices, to that world.
That's pretty cool. So we have all the steps. So like as we read along that blog, see all those 10 blog posts are published right now, or is
yeah, they are. And actually what we did after I did all 10 of them individually, I then condensed them into one big giant blog post that is all 10. So you don't have to go jumping around in links. If you can notice, like, the little scroll bar, it's small because
I just noticed now. Yeah, it's true.
Yes, it's very tiny, because what we did after I was done was I went back in, I basically built it all together, and it is step by step on how to achieve your goal. And you can apply this to any Web3 project, Web2 project, Web1 project. That's one thing that's really powerful about DevOps, and I've always been passionate about, is that if you're writing software, you can do these things that we have proven over many years to add value to the way that you write software. And I just wanted to apply it to a Web3 world as well, and it works really, really well there.
This is all open source. And it's available in your GitHub. We'll make sure to share the links. All the links will be provided in the description of this video, so like everybody can read that and learn. So like Web3, is it like true now, or it's something coming?
Oh, that's a really good question. So you've already seen Web3 things. So if you've ever heard of an NFT, a non-fungible token that is based off of Web3. If you have heard of a central bank digital currency, or CBDCs, those are big on top of the Web3 world because they want to use that digital ledger, that distributed ledger technology as the base of it. Another thing is DeFi, or decentralized finance. These are all things that you've probably already heard about. Those are all related to and built on top of this blockchain. So they're kind of lumped together into this world called Web3. So it's already here. I mean, if you've ever looked at a cryptocurrency, right? So if you've ever had a Bitcoin or bought Ethereum or Dogecoin, like, all that stuff is Web3. So it's definitely here already. There's a lot of investigation being done in it, a lot of investing being done in it. So I think we're just scratching the surface of its potential. And I just can't wait to see what the community and what engineers do. Because to me, it's not all solutions will be 100% Web3 or 100% Web2 or 100% of anything. It's going to be, wow, this is a new tool in my toolbox as a developer, and I'm going to be able to use this to solve problems that we haven't even seen yet. And what I want to make sure everyone understands, that if you choose to use Web3 technology, you can actually do it really, really well here at Microsoft using everything that we have in Azure, and even some of the things like Visual Studio Code that live outside of Azure that enable a developer to be better at what they do.
Love it. And I heard also that you're part of you're a speaker at Open Days. Like,
the Azure
in fact, today is happening.
Absolutely. So if you watch that, not only will you see a lot of great open source stuff, but Kathleen Mitford and I actually have a conversation similar to this that covers a couple other topics that are related to Web3. So you'll get a little bit more about the DeFi and about what cool things are being done with NFTs and CBDCs and things like that. So it's a fun watch. I encourage you to go watch it. The demo that they do is fantastic. I was really blown away by the demo that Aaron Crawfus does. And we talk about how it relates to Web3 in that as well.
Oh, wonderful. You know what? Thank you. I need to watch that demo now, so we'll go. Well, thank you a lot for your time and sharing about Web3 and how it can help our DevOps practices.
Awesome.
And I hope everybody learn more about it.
Thanks for having me.